SummerSlam, Dunkirk, and Simon Miller from WhatCulture and The Miller Report. This is Staying In.
I don't want to alarm anyone, but
what have you done?
What haven't you done?
Just watch the window behind him for blue lights.
So what I've been doing is I was sort of aimlessly scrolling along on my mobile phone the other day, looking for apps that had been reduced to free, because I'm a classy gentleman like that. And one of the things I'd like to do is I want to work on. We talked very vaguely about going down the gym and getting a bit of exercise and stuff, and we all know about my exercise bike that's covered in dust. One of the things I'd like to do is work on my abs. Okay,
just your abs.
Just
which
like,
ab?
So yeah, just like the bottom two. But like, I go to the gym for my arms and for my legs, and I don't ever do sit-ups or anything like that when I'm at the gym, right? So what I found is I found an app. Okay,
I'm excited about this. I'm excited.
Did you find it on the App Store?
Hey! I liked it.
Simon, don't encourage him. Please don't encourage him. So,
does it vibrate on your?
just hold the phone up.
Does it tone it?
Just hold the phone up to your chest, like those horrible Ronaldo adverts. There's at work, because we've always got Sky Sports on, and if I'm working late into the night, that's always when you get those endless adverts of really happy American people doing stuff on odd machines. And there's one with Cristiano Ronaldo where he has that like 6-pack vibrator, and he's just standing there, and you see it like jolting his. And he does this really weird thing where he stands there, looks at the camera, smiles, and then just smooths his body down and looks at you. And now all I'm imagining is Pete doing that, but with like an iPhone.
Yeah.
On
6 iPhones.
just masking taped in place. Mum, call me, call.
Right, so I've downloaded this app, and what this app does is it is really, really simple. It just counts the amount of like sit-ups that you've done. Okay.
I love that you need an app for that.
Here's the thing. Here's here's the little sort of twist on this. It has leaderboards that you can share with your friends. Now I know you're shaking your heads here, but
I like it.
Right, Simon, you be up for this, right? Like, where you can basically compete with one another to figure out how many sit-ups you can do.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a great idea.
But surely this is just Hernia the video game.
Yeah, but that's new.
Obviously, Simon, you're a fitness person. I mean, I don't want to bury the lead here. You are a lot fitter than we are.
Combined.
I would pay good money to see Pete go to the gym with Simon.
Have you used apps, Simon, or have you just used like willpower?
It's mostly been willpower. I mean, I do use some apps. I use like MyFitnessPal. That's pretty good because it kind of tells you about, you shouldn't take it overly seriously because sometimes it just lies. But it basically, if you want to know how many calories are in a banana, MyFitnessPal, because that's pressing stuff. MyFitnessPal will just let you know. So I use that quite a lot. I don't think I've used any other ones. But then again, when I got into fitness, there was literally, this is not a joke either, there was about one website you could go to talk about fitness. That's how, in its infancy, the internet was. And now, obviously, the internet is just
Fitness.com.
It's called ABC Bodybuilding. And the best thing about it was, after a while, it just completely changed and became this massive religious website. And I was like...
Was it like the body of the church? Like, hang on.
No, honestly, all they did it would change from talking about working your abs to this is how you find this is when you should go to church, and I was like, all right, yeah, I mean, good for you.
Bench pressing tablets.
Yeah, it was really strange.
You've conquered the physical world. Now move on to the spirit.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I've never used an app though. Maybe I should. I like the idea of competitive ab work. I think that sounds good.
Well, I think you're basically an end of level boss if we were to good. One of the things that we want to talk about is we talked a while ago, ages ago actually, it was like episode number number 3.
It was quite early on in the run.
Where we talked a whole bunch about wrestling. Sam got all upset because he wanted to get involved in the wrestling chat, which is fair enough.
Yeah, we said in the podcast that we were the only ones who watched it. Sam got very offended when we said that. Had a little cry.
My level of involvement with wrestling is every once in a while I will read an IGN article to update me, maybe every 6 months, and just dip back in and go, brilliant, it's still absolute madness, and then come away from it again. So is there's something new happening in the world of WWE, or some big events coming up soon?
Yes.
Is that right?
Well, coming up is SummerSlam, which is probably one of the big 4 events, possibly maybe the second biggest of the year. So that's coming up very shortly. So we thought we'd take this opportunity, as good as we are, to have another little chat about wrestling. So Sam, you can also join in. And we thought we'd bring on Simon Miller from Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast and many other wrestling-related articles.
That's right. But wrestling's basically criticizing wrestling is now part of my job. That's ridiculous. That's not a job. That's mucking around on the internet.
It is, and it's fun to criticize as well, because it is a little bit bad but great at the same time.
How do you? So when you criticize wrestling, is it? So we all have a theatre background. Is it the same as? Is it the same as sort of like critiquing theatre? Do you know what I mean? Is it like a criticism of the or like the symphony or whatever? Is it like a critique of a performance, or is it something bigger than that?
It's kind of, wrestling's gone weird. I think this is the problem with wrestling, is that you get two kinds of fans. You get the fans that will watch it as if it's a theatre piece and enjoy it for what it is, and then you get other people. And I kind of fall into this category, but I don't take it as seriously as some, where you're so entrenched in what's going on behind the scenes. And you go on the internet to watch some of the stuff that I do to find out about all the juicy gossip backstage, that you actually criticise how the people backstage are then making these other people perform, and it becomes this bizarre. I can't even explain it, and I think that's why wrestling is so fascinating, and I think that's why a lot of people, when they move into adulthood, actually stick with it, because they get obsessed with how it all comes together behind the scenes. And now, recently, I think, simply because the hardcore audience for wrestling, especially in WWE, has become the main audience, you now got a bunch of people that will boo somebody in the ring because they don't like the way he is being booked, to use the wrestling term. So then you're all of a sudden, it's this weird quasi-world where you're actually booing the management, but the guy in the ring is... It would be like going to watch, say, the Phantom of the Opera, and booing whoever was playing the Phantom because you weren't happy with who the director was.
Like a panto, almost.
Yeah, it's like that. It's become absolutely bizarre, but also, I think that's why it's so good. It's fascinating. The whole thing is absolutely fascinating.
That's amazing.
Simon, can I ask, have you ever seen wrestling live? Like, have you ever been and watched?
I've seen a lot of, maybe too much, I would argue. Too much live wrestling.
What's it like as a live experience? Are you the same kind of person you are when you're watching it, say, on television?
No, I like to lose myself in it. I'm still that guy. When you're, caught up with the atmosphere and everything like that. The best thing about watching wrestling live is, it depends what wrestling you go to see. But if you're ever 100% like, is wrestling fake? Just go watch it live. You're like, oh yeah, it's definitely fake. It's still fun, and it's still like if you went to watch acrobatics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But when you are live and there aren't camera cuts, and especially if you go to see a non-televised show where the lights are low and the production values are a lot less, sometimes it is hilarious. It's like, it's just obviously it hurts. But you can just tell. It's so obvious. But I think that's why I love it. I love it because it really is silly. I think it's the silliest thing on the planet, and yet a lot of people, myself included, take it very seriously.
Have you ever jumped into the ring to show them how it's done?
Not yet, but soon.
But you're training, right?
I am. Yeah. My goal is still to have a match this year. So we'll be in August.
Wow.
So like 4 months or 5 months, whatever it is. So yeah, countdown is on. Until I pop up somewhere and just, I'll probably lose. I'll probably lose, but we'll wait and see what happens.
Have you got a wrestling name?
I think I'm going to use my name. I was having this discussion with somebody the other day, and it's simply because one of the wrestling outlets I work for, WhatCulture, are so big now, and because they are kind enough to let me host some of their shows, that a lot of people just know my name, and a lot of these wrestling fans go to these wrestling shows. So it would seem silly not to use my name. So
I watched Main Event for the first time the other day, in a long time, because how the wrestling week is kind of structured, I think I'm right, is that you've got Raw, SmackDown, and then Main Event as a kind of like a little subset of other matches and catch up of what's gone on over the week. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And I watched a fight with two of the most. It was a tag team cruiserweight battle with two of the most sort of boring named wrestlers. So boring that I can't remember. One of them just had "the" in front of his name.
Brilliant.
And his name was something like Kenneth Brannigan. And the other one was called something like Dirk Angle or Gable or something like that.
The Dirk Angle.
No, not good enough for that. Apparently he's really good, but they lost the fight. So
they're over.
Yeah, they're over now. They were up against two luchador wrestlers who were all about the rope work, and they had no chance. So I actually went to school with a guy who became he did become sort of semi-professional wrestler. He did a lot of luchador wrestling.
What was his name?
I think
begins with the.
Chad Gable.
I think he may have gone as Poseidon, because I remember we've been out of touch for a long time, but just through like Facebook and stuff, that obviously just like kept abreast of what he was doing, and he had a massive bright orange octopus tattoo on his chest, and had like koi carps all down his arms. He had like bright green scaled tight trousers on, and
Trident.
his persona.
Damn right he did.
Yep. Yeah. And so so that was his persona as Poseidon, wow. Poseidon of the ring,
God of the Sea.
So are you gonna, Simon? Are you gonna have are you gonna be? Because I think you can go one of two ways with costumes with wrestling. You can either go, Seaman of the Ring, I suppose.
Yes.
Or you can go
not the Sega version of that.
Not the Sega version. Or you could go sort of like Kurt Angle, that sort of like, I'm an Olympian.
It's a great question, and I actually was having a conversation with someone the other day. I don't know, because you're basically looking at pants, tights, or singlet. That's basically your three things, and neither of them massively appeal when you actually think about what they are.
You don't feel kind of like, just like you put one of them on, you're like, no, this feels right. You don't put that singlet on and think, you know what, this is what it is.
Maybe I need to buy all three and see how they feel. The problem is they're not cheap. You think a pair of wrestling pants would be cheap. It costs a lot of money. So
really?
Yeah, so I'm thinking if I get all three made, we're talking close to £1,000. So I'm like, do I? Yeah, and it's like, do I want
for thin trousers?
The boots alone are about £300. It's madness.
Jeez.
It's mad. I mean, you can get like a pair of crappy boots, but you're gonna just
get into JD Sports.
Well, that's the thing, yeah, but you're going to roll your ankle straight away and be like, I'm okay, guys. I'm okay. So I don't know. I genuinely have that conversation. I don't know. Pants, tights, or singlet. It's difficult. I'm not sure. I'd much rather just wear jeans and a T-shirt, but I don't think I'll get away with it.
Yeah. Simon the Casual Miller.
That's what, there is actually a wrestler in WWE who does wear jeans and a T-shirt, which again means I have less chance of doing it because that's already been taken.
Yeah,
so, that's the thing with wrestling. You've got to come up with something new. If you're going to do something different, it's got to be new. So I don't, and I'm not sure. It's difficult. It is difficult.
So what is new in the world of wrestling that's been leading up to them needing a SummerSlam?
Oh, it's been great.
It has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've enjoyed the last few weeks, mostly because of this giant man called Braun Strowman.
Which, Pete, last time we spoke about wrestling, Pete, during the conversation, you were like, I'm going to have a look on the website and have a look. And you had a look on the website and you had some pictures, some wrestlers, and you just sat there kind of shocked and went, Dan, this guy is absolutely huge. That person turns out to be Braun Strowman, who at the time when you said that was a bit of a nothingy bit part player on the roster, whereas now they've changed the way they're booking him, and he is absolutely up there, one of the top guys.
Has somebody, Vince McMahon gone, he's massive, why don't we give him more work?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much.
Cool.
But he is amazing. He's a lot of fun because he's kind of like wrestling is weird. Sort of, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, nobody wanted big guys anymore. They wanted these more average-looking. Average is not fair, but a smaller guy that was more athletic.
A bit like CM Punk, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and now we've gone the other way, and apparently we all want big, overblown monsters again because wrestling fans can never make up their mind. I mean, the answer is to have a balance, right? But we can never do that. But he's just great because, yeah, you do look at him and you go, this man is obscene. He's absolutely ginormous. Then he just runs around and beats people up, and you're like, yeah, wrestling's great. So and he's going against another guy who's essentially exactly the same in Brock Lesnar. I think kind of has a bit more mainstream appeal because he was in UFC for a while too. So you basically got two big dudes, and you got another guy called Samoa Joe who's basically the same. And Roman, you know what? It's just four big dudes. It's just four big dudes beating the crap out of each other, and for some reason,
awesome.
it is. It is really,
What's
really
not
good.
to love?
I mean, it'll be really hard hitting too. The only thing I do worry about SummerSlam is apparently it's going to be like 7 hours long. I can't handle another 7-hour wrestling show. WrestleMania this year was 7 hours, and by the end of it, I thought maybe I could just kill myself. And and then it was about 4.5 hours. I was like, I just kill myself, and then I never have to experience this again.
I mean, I was similar to kind of Sam, probably. I think in the terms of when I was watching it originally, and I got back into it around about 18 months ago. And actually, one of the reasons I got back into it 18 months ago, so I started watching the WhatCulture channel. I started watching his videos, which started giving me information, which kind of told me about information that I knew about back in the day, and also was introducing me to people like AJ Styles and Kevin Owens and stuff like that. And so when I started watching some of that, I knew then had an emphasis of, actually, I know these guys are good. So I'd heard all about, I don't watch, say, NXT, but I'd known that Samoa Joe was someone I should be excited about. So when he came up and he appeared, now I'm aware, now I'm ready for him.
So one of my little
ambitions.
My little
go on.
Sort of my
starting with the ab work. It only goes up from here, really.
One of
ABC.
my little treats that I like to give myself every once in a while is I will go onto YouTube and I will type in best wrestling surprise moments.
Oh, it's the best thing in the world.
Right. So I understand that at WrestleMania, people will be like, "Oh my word!" Like the Jim Ross guy will go, "Oh my goodness me! Look over there! It's this guy." Now, is there a chance that that's going to happen at SummerSlam? And if yes, who is likely to make a return at this point?
I don't know about a return. Ooh. I can't think of it, but I think there may be a surprise in, when you get to fantasy booking land. So there's a man called Baron Corbin who's on SmackDown, and he won the Money in the Bank briefcase. Sorry, Money in the Bank contract. We don't say briefcase. We're not allowed to say that.
Okay.
Even though it's a briefcase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we have to say contract. That's the rules. So that basically means he can cash that in for a world title opportunity whenever he sees fit. And WWE take that very literally. So there's always the chance he could come out after one of the planned world title matches and cash that in. And that's always a surprise. That always gets a reaction from the crowd. But in terms of wrestlers that could come back, I don't even know who's out there that they could go after. So no, I don't think there is. I think they've done them all. Which
I don't
is
think
worrying.
there's anyone kind of long-term injured, or there's from what I'm aware of, there's no one out there that if they were to show up, everyone would be like, "Oh my god, I didn't see this coming." There's no one huge in NXT who could step up, I don't think, at the moment.
The other problem is, ever since WWE killed off WCW in like 2001, they've now gone through all the old nostalgic stars. So that's the show. And the last guy was kind of Goldberg, and he came back last year. AJ Styles is now in the WWE. So it's kind of like we've run out of old dudes because we're getting old, and therefore life is passing us by.
And I think one of the other problems that the WWE has, and probably why it is getting a bit slumped, is that there's no one that's really filled those gaps that they held. There's no one with the presence of Undertaker or Kane, or even like it seems like John Cena's bubble has kind of burst a little slightly. He doesn't seem. I've not seen him as much around as he used to be. I don't know if he is, whether he's been injured or not. But like when I started getting back into wrestling, CM Punk was there, and I thought, this is the new kid. This is a guy who's as arrogant but as stylish as a Rock, who could be up there and have a long lasting career, and then was he fired or he was chucked out of the WWE?
He walked away, basically. I think
he walked away, from it. And then Daniel Bryan, like all these like massive people seem to be coming up, but no one seems to be able to have held that position. When I was a kid, those long-standing superstar names across an entire sort of generation.
I don't think there's anyone currently in the roster that you would put at the same kind of level of popularity and longevity as people like The Rock, people like Stone Cold. I don't think at the moment those people are there. The people currently wrestling,
is that
could
just
be
a generational thing, or is that just?
Yeah, I bet there are a load of kids with John Cena t-shirts on that.
I do think that's the case. I do think it's weird when you see a kid watch wrestling. Something goes off in your brain, you're like, oh yeah, of course. So it's like, because whereas I'm not saying all adults do this, but there is a certain type of fan that will, they'll judge the ratings and they'll judge the buy rates and they'll be like, oh look, wrestling's terrible, and then you see a kid just in the front row going crazy for John Cena, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. And it is kind of different, because if you did grow up on Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, wrestling was massively successful then. Yep. Same in the late 90s with Austin The Rock. It was massive. And while it's not as massive as it was then, to a kid who doesn't care about that stuff and just sees big guy or big girl on TV, that's it. They just buy in. So in 15 years' time, they'll be having this conversation about John Cena, going, well, there's nobody like John Cena anymore. and it is very generational in that sense. But at the same time, I think the difference now is, apart from John Cena, there's no mainstream stars. That's the thing. Nobody crosses over into the public eye. There are a few people that I'm sure have name value thanks to social media and just how small the world is. But I remember back in the late 90s, people like the Austin and the Rock they turned up on the Big Breakfast. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know that wrestlers still do that when they come over to the UK, but it does not have that same, holy crap. Like, I remember that in America, they put, and this shows how old this is, they put Stone Cold Steve Austin on the cover of their TV guide. I think maybe it's called TV Guide. And I remember, because that's when that did it did millions, and everyone was like, you put a wrestler on the front of and that's because he wasn't a wrestling star, he was just a star. And that definitely applies to John Cena, because he just got cast in the new Transformers movie, which is a proper big AAA Hollywood blockbuster. So he's kind of made that transition. And I think the problem now is there isn't even anybody close. Like, the guy they'd like that to be is Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns is he's like a science project. It's just, it's just, like, we could sit here for hours and just break down the reaction and the plan for Roman Reigns and how dire it's been. Not necessarily dire, but how it's just failed miserably.
Although it did have one of the best kind of promos of the year, where following WrestleMania, where Roman Reigns defeated The Undertaker and theoretically put him in retirement, the following night on Raw, he came out to...
It was good, yeah.
The most toxic reception you could possibly imagine. He stood there in the middle of the ring for about 8.5 minutes without saying a word, as just the crowd just pelted him with abuse, and then said like 5 words, like, this is my yard now, and walked off. And it was amazing.
It was amazing.
But they've not pursued that, and that's the problem.
Well, again,
that reaction is incredible. If that's the reaction you're going for. And he's got that reaction, but they still want to try and give him something different.
And that's what I find, that's where wrestling gets strange, because the whole thing was always, you listen to the audience, you do what the audience wants. They don't do that now. They go, no, we know what you should be doing, and therefore we're going to push this really hard. And the audience knows they're doing that, so the audience goes, well, screw you, we're not going to do what you want. And you have this weird game of tennis where nobody wins. And that's why wrestling is so fascinating. That's why I do think you get to a certain age where you do transition away from, I'm enjoying this as a show, to I'm enjoying this as almost as a business and as how it works. And that does. I don't know any wrestling fan at our age doesn't get into it and within 6 months to a year starts going, oh, what does this mean and what does that mean? And that's it. They're hooked. They're hooked. And
well,
they
that
go
was
out their way.
when I got back into it. That was one of the first things I realised, that suddenly there was just not just an understanding, but the conversation wasn't just around who beat someone in the title match. It was, what does that mean? Who's going to win based on how it's being booked and the storyline as it's playing out. And that was really interesting to me, because it was like I was coming back to wrestling, but I was also coming to it at a completely new angle. That suddenly you kind of look back when you was watching it as a kid and thinking, oh yeah, that's why that happened. Now I see it from that behind the scenes kind of storyline driven business point of view. It adds a whole new layer of enjoyment to it, I think.
Yeah, I totally think that's true. I think that's why a lot of wrestling fans are lifers, as they say, because even though they may not watch Raw or SmackDown each week, they'll go on, WrestlingObserver.com or whatever, and they'll read Vince McMahon wasn't happy this week because blah blah, and that's it. That's what they want to know. But I think that's what makes wrestling so great. It'd be like going to see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and coming away and go, I didn't like that movie because they didn't treat, Chris Pine. Oh, not Chris Pine. What's his name? Chris Pratt. In the way that I thought he should be treated. Like we talk about, he's a character on the screen.
Bonkers.
And the way, it's the fact that the fans and the audience now control all that too. Like they were in Raw last night. They were in Toronto, which is known as, in Canada, which is known as a very sort of smart city, as they say, where they're well aware of everything that's going on backstage. So if you were, say, a 13-year-old kid and you had no idea about that, you would watch that show and you would be utterly baffled. They boo all the good guys. It's completely backwards because they know what they want and they don't appreciate what they're being given. And it's just, and you think, what other either form of sport or entertainment does this? And it doesn't exist, and it's both a blessing and a curse because that does come up with its own problems. Because again, you have that weird game of tennis where nobody will pander to the other, but it also does make it fascinating, and that's why I'm obsessed with it, because there's nothing else like it. It's just, and then you remember it's just dudes in their pants.
Yeah,
and it's
it always keeps going back to you. Kind of, I sit there looking at it, and suddenly I realise I'm sat on the tube. People could be looking at me watching just two men in pants roll around a ring together.
Yeah.
Well, people do that to me, but I'm not watching wrestling. I have to make an apology, guys, because you know how I know
should almost be a feature on the show.
Yeah, it's apologies.
Listen, I've got to make an apology. So we had an email. So it's serious when we say we've had an email. So Kris and I did the podcast last time, and we thought we'd discovered. I mean, I say we. I'm trying to get Kris in trouble mostly. Take him down with me. We thought we'd discovered a Phoenix Down-esque play on words, and gone, oh my goodness me, this is the thing in the game Miles and Kylo, as we were referring to it. I've actually had an email from the creator of Miles and Kylo, a wonderful mobile game.
So what was the play on words?
Well, so here's the thing. The game is called, I was calling it Miles and Kylo, and Kris was like, oh, like miles and kilometers,
because it's KILO.
All right, okay.
And I was like, oh my word, I think we've parappa the rappered this, and really broken it down and gone, oh right, yeah, brilliant, play on words here. So Mike got in touch and he said, actually, Miles and Kylo is a play on miles and kilometers. The two characters... All right, Kris. The two characters have kind of contrasting personalities, and I thought those names would be a fun way of hinting at that. A little Easter egg, if you go to the stats menu on the main menu, you can see the total distance you've run in miles and kilometers. And just to clear it up, it's pronounced kilo. So it's Miles and Kilo. There you go, that's the game on iOS. And he also says, I can't wait to make a strategy role-playing game called Metric and Imperial. And I'm going to hold him to that, because that actually sounds like a great idea.
Really? Does it?
Yeah. Metric and Imperial.
Where you have to right, I'm going to battle that army 1,374 metres away. Sorry, you don't quite reach on this Imperial army. Thank you. You got to judge the distances just so much so it covers in imperial and metric depth.
So you're basically, what you're saying is that you're wrong about everything.
Yeah, I'm just.
And we should always trust Kris over you.
Basically, there should be a tiny little asterisk right at the end of the podcast every single show.
Probably said something wrong.
Yeah, probably wrong about all of this stuff.
To be fair, Pete, I remember a number of years ago us having a conversation. I think someone mentions using kind of the phrase of blowing smoke up someone's arse. And then Kris came out in his classic fashion of telling us the origin of that, to which point we all sat there and said, you are absolutely talking out of your arse. That's completely wrong.
It is not that people in the old days would take a pair of bellows and blow smoke up the butt of people who had drowning so that they would revive.
Wait, is that legit?
That's legit.
Yeah.
You would think it wasn't, right?
The first time you hear it, you assume it's nonsense.
You assume that Kris has gone off on one.
That sounds, hence why I reacted with shock and awe, because why did this happen?
But I think on the plus side, you've just found your wrestling persona.
You're right. I can beat them and then blow smoke up their ass. I like it. That's good. That's good.
But since that day, I've known never, ever, ever question Kris when he comes out with a random story, because generally it's going to be true.
It's going to be
fine.
Well,
other than the time that he said that we all start life as buttholes.
Yeah.
This is gold. I'm learning so much.
when Dan, the first thing to come out of Chris's mouth, when Dan announced to all of us that he was having a child, was that it will start life out as a butthole.
Yeah,
and grow from there.
Yeah. Is that true?
So Dan, apparently it is true.
We
all start out as buttholes.
We all start as assholes.
The
intention I did it was to kind of, I suppose it was something quite humbling, really, that no matter how big you are, you all began life.
I find it difficult to believe that after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, we found that the quickest way to gestate is to start off with the arsehole and then build out.
Yeah. Brain? No. Heart? No.
Arsehole? We've all got one of those and they're all the same.
Yeah. Now you say it, it actually makes a lot of sense to me. I'm actually starting to buy into this.
That's in the middle, isn't it?
It explains a lot of people's personalities.
It does.
We were all together for the big joining of the minds.
Sure.
The last time we're all going to be together before Dan has his child. So, we made good time of it and played lots of games. We spoke about it on a podcast.
Yeah.
But one game that we didn't talk about at that time was actually Captain Sonar. Which is a game that you guys, not Simon, got for me. Cheapskate.
Sorry.
For my birthday, which, I mean, that's a story of itself, just how difficult it was to get hold of.
Three attempts, basically.
3 attempts to buy the game.
2 times eBay had to step in because the seller, for whatever reason, just didn't send it, or sent it and said it had been sent and it hadn't. So, yeah... Third time lucky.
In English. What I love about that story is that either they genuinely didn't send it, or there's a post room in Liverpool who are having a whale of a time with 2 copies of Captain Sonar somewhere.
Everyone can play.
So, Simon, are you familiar with Captain Sonar?
I did look it up earlier. Yes, I mean I've never played it, but after seeing its name, I did look it up. And board games are a funny thing to me because I love a good board game, and yet I never play them. And it's that kind of... So, I mean, what a redundant thing to say. It's like, I love saving lives, but I ignore people when they're dying. But it's one of those things. I used to play Carcassonne loads back in the day, which I think a lot of people did just because that, became like one of these games, especially when it was on Xbox Live. Everyone was like, oh, Carcassonne's really good. Yeah. But yeah, I've never really sort of embraced that side of things, which I really should do, because every time I sit down to play one, in fact, I put it away now. I bought one the other day and it's still sat over there wrapped up, but I can't see it from here. I've just got to, I've got to man up. Go get these board games played.
Well, you will absolutely love Captain Sonar. When Sam explained it to me, I was like, this actually sounds amazing. It's very much unlike a bunch of board games. So, yeah, I mean, you're probably best at describing it, Sam.
Okay, here we go. Well, you mentioned like how you get games, you love the board game, but you never play them. But Captain Sonar has been one of those games because ideally you need 8 players to play it. And and that rarely ever happens because I just don't have any friends, really, that many. So when we were all together and there was 4 of us, that's kind of the first opportunity I had to play it. And the idea is that most of the heft of the game box comes with these 2 massive fold-out D&D style screens that you spread across the middle of the table. So both sides, both teams, are what they're doing, they're hidden from each other. You can't tell what either side is doing with the maps in front of them. So one person is in a 4-player game. One person is a radio operator. The other person is the captain, and they're the engineer, and also they are the first mate. So ideally, in an 8-player game, everyone's taking on one of the 4 roles on each side of the table. So we played quite a reduced version. And to boil it down to its constituent parts, it's basically battleships. The captain has a map in front of them, which is numbered and lettered in a grid style, and everyone has their own little dry wipe pens, which is the best thing to come to board game technology in the last sort of 5 or 6. Every game's using dry wipes now. It's fantastic.
Yep.
And so the captain will just plot a point. Obviously, the other team can't see where they're starting, and they just shout a direction: north, south, east, and west. So the other team, obviously, their job is to try and hunt down this submarine that you're in, and shoot torpedoes and lay mines and send out drones to try and find you, catch you, and kill you. So there, on the other team, they've got a radio operator who has exactly the same grid but has a piece of acetate that they can move around. And so they make the marks, and their job is to listen to the captain of the other team, following their instructions to try and find out where their submarine is. While the captain and the engineer and the first mate are all working together to send the submarine in a direction so that they can use their torpedoes and they can fire off mines. So it's just this wonderful game of cat and mouse. And the best thing about it is that we played it turn by turn. So me and Kris took a turn, and then Pete and Dan took a turn, and then it was back to us. But the best way to play it is real time. So the captains are just shouting out orders all the time, and the radio operators on the opposite teams have to listen to that.
That would just be chaos
across the table.
It sounds excellent. That's what I love about board games. Like that level of just depth and ingenuity is awesome. I just think, I need to play more.
Well, we've talked about this before, about how so many different board games work with lots of different themes. Like you can, there's a game about stitching a quilt together, and that's one of the most popular games at the moment.
That's great.
One about sort of farming a land, one about doing, lots of different themes.
There's a great one about RPG characters trapped inside a mall.
Oh yeah, Magic Maze,
and they have to get all their weapons before the mall closes.
Yeah,
why not?
Brilliant.
Actually, to tie it all in, it's behind me right now. I do have Luchador, the Mexican wrestling dice board game, and that's awesome.
What?
That's amazing. So everyone
Tell
should
us
play
all about this.
Well, I say that I've never actually played it properly yet because I've never had anyone to play it, but I've had it since February. But I'm looking at it now, and I read the rules ages ago. It basically is like you start off as a lowly Mexican luchador, and you have to make your way up to the main event scene. You do that through dice rolls and role playing. It's basically like Dungeons and Dragons, but for Mexican luchadors. And it sat there for when eventually somebody says, "I'll play it with you." I'm like, "You damn flipping right, you will." But and it comes with a mini ring and everything. It looks great, and I bought it ages ago. It's fantastic. So. One day. But I thought, I just remembered it was right there. I was like, oh man, I got to bust that out given the topics on display right now.
Oh yeah.
Sam is currently on Amazon searching for it.
Can you hear that?
The mini ring really just sold it, I think.
You should know that Sam does have a bit of a problem when it comes to purchasing board games.
I don't have a problem. It's under control.
So Pete, Dunkirk. What do you think Dunkirk's about?
Seriously. Do you generally know about Dunkirk?
I mean, I'm sort of torn here because obviously I know about the terrible tragedy at Dunkirk,
But you're so driven by wanting to pursue comedy.
I'm going to ignore that.
I'm sort of...
but you also don't want to, sort of besmirch the lives of those by making some sort of comedy out of it.
So I'm going to go ahead and put, I'm gonna reverse save a person's life, pull all the air out of this one, and say that it's a just horrible, sad movie about people dying on a beach for a cause that they may or may not have believed in. Is that it?
What? Well, no, loads of people didn't die on the beach.
I thought they died on the beach.
No.
I have to
Are you thinking about the D-Day landings?
Are you thinking about D-Day?
This was the opposite of D-Day.
Oh, my history knowledge is also equally bad. All I know is I'm treading on eggshells here.
What happened at Dunkirk?
What a question!
We're in a ever so slightly safer zone.
I'm assuming, I think I saw a trailer for this Dunkirk movie. It's by the man who did Batman.
Who was...
Bob Kane.
Bob Kane with Bill Finger.
Bob Kane presents Dunkirk.
And I'm assuming that...
Adam.
There's lots of stuff where there's boats and some men shouting, so I'm assuming it's either an invasion or them legging it.
Well, yes, there was a lot of legging it, which I think is. I think that's
the tagline, isn't it?
I think that's how Winston Churchill put it when he put the call out to all the
2 words.
Leg it.
Leg it.
We will fight them on the beaches. We will leg it to the landing grounds.
To be fair, it's good advice.
Not wanting to disrespect our ancestors.
Okay, so Dunkirk, you're right, Pete. It's by Christopher Nolan. It's one of his shortest films. I think shortest film since Memento. It talks about basically the point in the Second World War where you had about 330,000 Allied troops that were kind of stranded on the coastal town of Dunkirk in France. Right. Basically, between them and home was the English Channel, and behind them and encroaching upon them was the enemy. And this film has a kind of tripartite kind of structure where it's told from land, sea and air. So on the land, you see it from the soldiers' point of view, a week in their life on the beaches, waiting for a ship to take them back or trying to find a way back. On the boats, you see it in a day, because basically what would happen would be the actual... people who weren't fighting the conflict would just bring their fishing boats from England over to try and pick up the Allied troops. Because their boats were smaller, they could make their way into the shallow waters, and there's less chance of them being sufficiently bombed out of the air by the enemy aircraft, because that was a problem. They were sitting ducks essentially, because the opposition were basically just created this blockade. There was no point in them wasting manpower on the enemy. They could just wait for them to be picked off by the aircraft above. And the other narrative arc is those who are in the planes above, and you see an hour in their life. So the whole film kind of goes back and forth between these different narratives, and they kind of overlap or overtake each other because obviously there are different time limits. And Chris Nolan loves playing around with time and things. So what you have put together is this kind of breathless event that feels very compressed, that is a mixture of the kind of futility of conflict, but also there's a little bit of hope there. It isn't overly sickeningly patriotic. There's no kind of big grandiose speeches, even though it's got Kenneth Branagh in there. It's not a character piece, really. The dialogue is really sparse. It's more like a silent film. And behind it, you've got Hans Zimmer's kind of ticking clock that kind of just keeps it on pace and keeps that tension there. It's a very tense experience. And you've got actual Spitfires flying. I mean, it's filmed more or less entirely in IMAX, so it just fills the screen. And we saw it in IMAX in Manchester.
We did.
And it's extraordinary. You've got actual Spitfires flying and crashing. And it's just breathtaking in terms of scope and scale.
To give you an idea how breathtaking it was, my girlfriend needed the toilet about 20 minutes into the production. So she kind of turned to me and went, I need the loo. And so she went, I'll wait for a slower bit to go. And then, an hour later, There was just no point in the movie. Even there was a bit where they were in the hull of a boat and the Germans were shooting it for target practice and all the water was dripping through, and I helpfully turned to her and said, "This isn't helping much, is it?"
A lot of water. But one thing I will say, if you're expecting it to be something like Saving Private Ryan in terms of that gruesome aspects, it isn't that at all. There are obviously some dark moments in it, but it's not a kind of gruesome bloodbath that one sees in, say, something like Saving Private Ryan.
Well, that's actually something that because I've not seen the film, but I've heard a couple of things about it, and one of the things I'd heard was people commenting on the fact that there is a kind of a lack of blood, which is obviously a directorial decision not to kind of show that level of gore or gruesomeness or kind of that visceral kind of element of the film. Was that something you noticed whilst watching it, or is it only maybe when you think about it later on you think, oh yeah, they didn't show that? Because obviously with something like Saving Private Ryan, that's obviously very much Spielberg uses that element of colour, that kind of red, for really really good effect within that, and it kind of really brings home the devastation of kind of that attack. So how does it work kind of the other side of it where you don't really see much of it?
You feel that it's the end of a conflict, like it's almost as if they've used up all the blood. You feel that this is a war coming to the end, and actually you realise watching it that anyone could have won. Honestly, it feels just so kind of bleak. Obviously we're watching with the element of hindsight that know the actual outcome, but it feels like everyone's just knackered. And it's almost as if they've run out of blood at that point. That's what it feels like.
It's probably more to do with the fact that not actually many people you see get killed. It's the tension of the planes coming overhead, because historically the Germans actually, even though they could have just bombed them because it was really bad weather at the time, and because bombs don't have a massive effect if you land them in the sand just swallows them up, so you don't actually get that much sort of kill area for your weapons. They just left them. They just cornered them, so it wasn't like carnage like D-Day was. And I think what Spielberg was trying to do with Saving Private Ryan was smash this kind of image that D-Day was this massive heroic sort of, standing up to Jerry and marching on the beaches and just marching towards them, and they just folded. I think that's kind of what Spielberg was trying to get with that scene, was to actually put in front of people who were two or three generations apart from the war and go, actually, you've been taught this in history that we just turned up to the beaches and then we won, but this is actually what happened. It was a massacre. Whereas here in Dunkirk, I think what Christopher Nolan was trying to do was trying to just get the sense of the urgency and the tension of that piece, of people just waiting there, that uncertainty. And one of the best bits of the film is when they get back, spoilers, they get back, and they're all and most of the soldiers are expecting to be ridiculed. They expect to come back and be absolutely hated because it's a retreat. They retreated from battle. People had to come in little jetties to save them. The army couldn't even save them. The tools that they had were too big, too monstrous, too cumbersome to actually. So when they came back, they said, people can't look us in the eye. But in the end, they're actually hailed as heroes. The fact that there was this massive big effort, and that's what spurned out of Dunkirk came Winston Churchill's. We'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them on the landing grounds, we'll fight them on the hills, and it's from that there was that sort of first big stirring of where we were losing, but then there's this big sort of change of the tide.
Well, you sold me on the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll go see it. I wanted to see it anyway, but now I definitely do. So
go and see it in IMAX as well.
Oh, I love Chris Nolan. I think Chris Nolan's the man, so I'm involved.
He is.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
And IMAX is kind of, that's his vision. That's what he wanted it to be. And your guts shake every time a Spitfire comes over.
That sounds great.
And it's just you never get, obviously your bladder will not get a chance to relieve itself. It's just
that should be on the poster.
That should be the poster.
5 stars. I mean, it's a film that you'll never sit down and go, yo, you know what I fancy tonight? Dunkirk. It's not that kind of movie. It's not, it's not something you'll just whack on.
I'm in. I'm involved. I wanted. I was up for it anyway. I love war, and I love Christopher Nolan. So.
Brilliant.
Well, we're having a war day, aren't we?
Yeah, we are on
Friday.
Friday,
having a war day. Unfortunately, we can't play Captain Sonar as part of war day.
No, it's a two-hander. I think that'd be chaos. There were very few one-man submarines.
What's your war day consisting of?
So we'll play a bit more Memoir 44, because we're working our way through the campaign book of that. So that's been really good fun. That's great. And then we're going to deep dive back into War of the Ring, or maybe Battle of the Five Armies. Ooh. God help me. Chris brought it round the other day, and everything's in its own little velveteen bag.
Yeah.
And everything's got a sack.
Yeah.
He handed me this leather pouch that I wasn't sure whether that's been cupping something.
Your mind went
intimate.
There, Sam. Your mind went there.
It looked like the kind of thing that Simon might wear in the ring to keep his modesty. It was I don't know what websites you've been buying.
I don't know. You'll have to tell me because you're obviously more knowledgeable about it than me.
Oh, but this little leatherette satchel.
Can you stop miming it by your groin?
That's what it looked like. Yeah, so we're having a war day, which
that'll be fun.
You got to put a day aside because these things take time.
Oh gosh, yeah. They're not light and frothy war games, are they?
No, but treating them as such isn't, very respectful.
It's all right. You've always got Call of Duty WW2 at the end of the year if you want your more cinematic war experience.
Yeah, I mean,
gosh, yeah.
With its zombie mode.
Yeah, how do they get away with it? I don't get how they get away with it.
You thought they were bad the first time.
My favourite bit was where there were some fans who complained because there were in kind of the multiplayer they were allowing kind of female characters, and the argument was that that's not realistic. There weren't females in World War II, and like the same people are like, yes, zombie mode, yes.
What monumental bellends.
I'll never understand how that zombie mode is okay. It makes no sense to me. That I mean, I don't mind it, but I do mind it when this is a different conversation, different time. When you've got all the developers going, yeah, we really want the younger generation. We really want the younger generation to learn about World War II through our game. You're like, wait. I don't mind you making a World War II game. I think you do it very well, but you've crossed the lines anyway.
Pick one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I woke up the other morning.
Da-da-da-da-da.
And I had to obviously perform my daily morning ablutions.
Sure.
And I was at the toilet at the pan, and
this is taking a weird turn.
I know, I was wearing my dressing gown, and then I noticed on the corner of my dressing gown a big house spider mid-flow. Okay? And I'd been out the night before, so there was a lot to get through.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I realised, in some parallel universe somewhere, there is Sam who would deal with that situation and just let Spider crawl over face, and be like, nah, well, here we go, have a little play, look at it, keep myself occupied. But in this universe,
no. If you were to give that spider a name, what would you call it?
Hang on. Sorry, we just come back from Spider-Man: Homecoming, so there's only one name going through my head at the moment. Penis Parker. There we go.
Perfect.
What Sam doesn't know is that I stayed over at Sam's, and I had the misfortune of using the bathroom after him. And I went to the sink and I saw this spider on the sink, and I took a picture of it, and I have it on my phone.
Do you?
Yeah, I have my picture on my phone. I'll send it to you in the WhatsApp group. And I mean, I'll just describe it for now. Basically, it was so small my camera couldn't pick it up to focus. So
it was bigger than that.
No,
it was bigger than that. I had to disrobe mid-flow.
No,
it's intense.
And then stride naked from the bathroom into the other room to get some dress.
To get a dress?
To get some dress.
It's the only way you can beat a spider. Everyone knows that.
I'll beat you at your game.
Like, I'm sending this in the WhatsApp group now.
Okay, can you describe it for Simon?
I will describe it for Simon as well. Actually, I'll get.
I'd like to know. I don't feel left out.
Hold on. Let's have a look. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I'm,
was it just? It wasn't. No, it wasn't. That's just a stain.
That was. It had little legs. I was following it around. That's why it's slightly blurred.
Right, so obviously we'll put this up on the Twitter feed, but this is... I mean, if we were to just upload that with no context whatsoever, it would look like... Somebody would respond with, that's just a slightly blurry white photo with basically nothing in it.
Smudge.
A smudge. In fact, yes, I would call the spider Smudge.
It's a good name for a spider, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a pretty good name.
That would sell more children's books than Penis Parker.
Yes, it would.
Can we talk about the Jewish wedding next time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more fresh in my mind.
Unless Simon, do you want to hear about Sam going to a Jewish wedding?
I kind of do, because I'm Jewish. So now I'm intrigued.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay,
no,
then you can fact check.
Okay, fact check. Don't worry, I've got the crib sheet that we were all handed in front of us, which laid out exactly what happens during the ceremony and what happened.
It sounds amazing. We all got the Snapchats. It looked incredible.
This thing
It was so good.
It sounded amazing.
It was genuinely one of the best and most incredible weddings I have ever been to. There's no event ever that I've ever been to has been such a celebration of sort of two people not only coming together but a whole community coming together to celebrate it with them. So when we got to the synagogue to start off with, already it was a little bit tense because they had security there, and we were kind of like, oh, this is a little bit, already sort of set itself apart from other weddings that I've been to, and unfortunately that seems to be a bit of a necessity around Manchester these days. Like even the Jewish schools have security, assigned to them and stuff like that. It's just awful.
Jeez. Yeah.
But anyway, the whole day was incredible. And then, so we went into the synagogue, and the first thing that happened is me and my girlfriend were separated. So all the men sit on one side of the synagogue, and all the women sit on the other. And I don't know if you know, Simon, whether that's just a wedding thing or that's a traditional seating plan at synagogues.
Well, the best thing about the Jewish religion is it's basically broken up into three sects. And the way I like to describe it is can't be asked, can be a bit asked, super asked. And
Okay. Well, it's how we all began life. So
well, exactly, yeah. So yeah, with the Orthodox, if you're Orthodox Jew, yeah, they still do separate men and women in synagogues. I'm Reform, which is kind of asked, so they don't do that in Reform synagogues. You can just sit with whoever you want. So yeah.
Okay. So we were separated, so they were very asked. And it was a black tie wedding. So all the men were in tuxes, and all the women were in ball gowns, and they have you got to cover your shoulders and cover your head if you're married or you have been married and you're a woman in a synagogue. So we were sitting on the side, and it was like the meeting of the elders. All these Jewish men together in their tuxes, cool. Surveying the scene. And in the centre of the room, we had the band, and the band were incredible. They played, this band, from 2:00 in the afternoon till about midnight, non-stop. Everything was soundtracked. Everything had a back. Even the father of the groom's speech had a soundtrack along to it. It was that kind of wedding.
I just picture somebody like a 70s sitcom. As soon as every time somebody comes out of the toilet, they play a little guitar.
So to kind of briefly go over the ceremony, we were given a sort of a rundown of what happens and what everything means, and in the ceremony takes place underneath the chuppah, which represents the house of the couple. Okay. And so everyone's there, and so the whole idea of the day is that these two people are coming together and they're building a house within this community, and they're building this world together. Like the bride, who's referred to as the Hatan, has to circle the Kala, who's the groom, 7 times, which represents the 7 days it took for the earth to be created, and represents this world that they are creating, the two of them. The best line of the day is when the rabbi said, "The Khatan will always be a king as long as he treats his Khatan like a queen," and that was fabulous. The rabbis were so sage and wise. It was fantastic. and so the rest of the ceremony went on, and they do a lot of blessings. Yeah. There's 2 blessings over cups of wine that they then have to drink, and then they have to pass something valuable to something of value or of worth has to be given to the bride, which is traditionally a ring, but I think can be sort of any kind of thing that's deemed as value. And there's lots of blessings. There was a few times where people in the audience would just started sort of singing and banging on the pews, and that was just incredible. And then there was a solemn moment where the groom has to break the glass under his foot, and that's to represent the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem.
Right.
And they kind of took it as a chance to use it to kind of reflect on the fact that, you know, kind of what's happening in the world and the fact that they needed security, and it's a really solemn moment. And obviously everything's done, and you know they're reading in the Aramaic text and speaking in Hebrew, so everything's sung and everything's in this wonderful sort of archaic language. And there was this moment where it's just really, really solemn, and everyone was like this moment of reflection, and he heard this glass smash, and then like a flick of the switch, like the whole room just erupted. All the men stood up, everyone sort of evaded the chuppah, this house, and it was this idea of this whole community just standing up, and then the celebration just started. And everyone just like sang in the synagogue. Everyone sort of went into the chuppah and congratulated them and celebrated them. And we went to the reception venue, and then we suddenly heard the music like strike up in the reception rooms. Like, oh, fantastic! We may go and sit down, and oh, they've already put the starters out. This is very well organised. And we're sitting down, and no one was eating anything. And then suddenly someone got onto the mic and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your bride and groom." And suddenly, like these white arches appeared from nowhere. These people had like cannons of confetti. Music still playing. This band had not stopped from, I think, when the reception doors opened, from probably about 4:00. Just not stopped. And this is about 4:30. And the bride and groom came down. They're separated because they were very arsed. So the men and the women don't dance together, because it's considered immodest.
Okay.
For a man to watch a woman dance and a woman to watch a man dance. So,
particularly your dancing.
Yes, particularly my dancing. And then basically, for the next 30 minutes non-stop, the band did not stop playing music at all, and everyone had their chance to dance or impress both the bride and the groom. So they would like... Everyone sort of got their chance to sort of either dance for the groom or dance for the bride. All the men dancing together and all the women dancing together. Obviously, they got the chair out and they hit and like lifted the groom up into the sky and like danced with him that way. At one point, they brought a chair for the groom and got two kids, and he rested his feet on the back of the kids, and then they got like a cloth, and like he was a boxer in the corner, and like they were shining his shoes ready and like everyone was bringing him drinks and because it was, you know, this went on, like he did not stop. Both parties did not stop for 30 minutes just dancing with everyone and anyone who would come and dance to them.
Brilliant.
Then that faded away, then we broke bread, then we had the starter. We thought, oh, this must be... The music started again, everyone gets up again, everyone starts dancing again, and that went on. We did not have our dessert till about 10 o'clock at night.
Brilliant.
And it was the most fabulous, and everything was just about the celebration of, you know, the community kind of bringing these people together.
What I love about all of this is, obviously that sounds fantastic, but Simon's been smiling throughout this entire thing, going, "Yeah, classic."
Yeah, it pretty much sounds like every Jewish wedding I've ever been to, which I like. I like that tradition is so strong that it just permeates everything. Yeah, it just makes me happy.
It's just a template.
Did the band overplay Hava Nagila? That's my last question. Every Jewish wedding I've ever been to, Hava Nagila gets played about 20 times. You're like, you got to stop playing Hava Nagila now. We're all done with that song.
It's like it sounds like you know those pop stars that have like one hit, like the people who did like Friends, like the Rembrandts, like just playing okay and the Friends theme again.
It is a lot like that. It really is.
But it was brilliant because they merged all these songs with like songs that I knew, but they did like Hebrew versions of them.
Brilliant.
And when they were doing the grace after the meal, and they were singing, and they were singing the prayers. They'd merge all the prayers into songs that I'd recognise. They started like using the Star Wars theme and Match of the Day themes and things like this. And
That's incredible.
It was just the strangest experience to hear what was happening, and people would just like stand up and chant and hit tables at various objects,
chanting the Match of the Day theme.
Yeah, and I just never been to a wedding or a ceremony where there was that. And obviously, Simon, I think you kind of confirmed what I thought, that there was just that understanding of how these things are done, and this like you could just feel the tradition dripping off the walls, like everyone was just there and knew what was going on and what was going to happen and just how to celebrate. It was incredible. Brilliant. We all said that we need to make more Jewish friends so we can go to more Jewish weddings, because there's no party like it. It's brilliant.
Can I just say that Mr. I don't know pop culture in the slightest. How do you know the band who sang the theme tune to Friends? Look, you know nothing. And yet, like that, you knew the Rembrandts.
I'm always surprised about where Pete draws his knowledge from.
Look, there are some things that you just have to know in life, and knowing that the Rembrandts did the theme tune to Friends is one of those things. I mean, how can you...
Nat, can you name the characters from Friends?
Oh, go on.
Ross, Rachel, Chandler,
yeah,
Joey, Phoebe.
That's pretty good, to be fair.
And Courtney.
I mean that's almost too good.
Yeah, yeah.
He's almost gone too far the other way.
Yeah, not good.
That was Staying In with Chris Darby, Daniel Frost, Peter Willington, and myself, Sam Turner. Of course, we were joined by the genius mind that is Simon Miller, and if you would like to hear more from him, then follow him on Twitter at SimonMiller316. Of course. You can search for his work on YouTube. Just look for the Miller Report. If you want to hear more of what Simon's got to say about wrestling, then just search for WhatCulture Wrestling. WhatCulture Wrestling, also on YouTube. And you can support the great man's work on Patreon, patreon.com/SimonMiller316. If you'd like to show a bit of love our way, not just to Simon, then please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your content from, and do help us spread the word about the show. You can do this simply by following us on Twitter at StayingInPod. You can visit stayingin.podbean.com for more information and links to the topics and discussions covered on this show. Once again, thanks very much for listening, and just before we go, just a quick message that we probably did say something wrong. Ta-ra!